We are live now.
Good morning and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Amrita-Seattle, a nonprofit whose mission is to live to serve to end generational poverty. Today's topic is Periods Don't Stop for Pandemic, and we'll be talking about the very important topic of menstrual health and hygiene for girls and women living in resource-deficient areas, particularly in the remote and isolated parts of India. My name is Rituja Indapure, and I am an Amrita-Seattle volunteer. I'm a technology professional, and I also serve on the Washington State Women's Commission. And today I am really excited to bring to you a panel of experts and leaders and pioneers in this field to discuss proven ways in which we might be able to talk about the sustainable models for delivering menstrual health and knowledge, products, and support to marginalized girls and women in resource-deficient areas in India. The panel today is extremely powerful, and I've had a chance to talk to some of them before, and I'm so pleased to introduce, today on the panel we have Nancy Muller, who is a global health consultant and was a senior program officer at PATH. Celeste Mergens, the founder and CEO of Days for Girls International. Jaydeep Mandal, founder of Aakar Innovations Private Limited. Tanya Mahajan, senior impact consultant at the Development Solutions Inc., and also part of the Menstrual Health Alliance of India. And lastly, Stanzin Angmo, who's the Amrita-Seattle Pathway Fellow and a Social Impact Lab Fellow for 2019. But before we get started with the panel, what I'd like to do is invite Sharmila Pal, who is an integral part of Amrita-Seattle, to introduce Amrita-Seattle and talk about it. So Sharmila, welcome. So can you help us understand how you got involved and became part of Amrita-Seattle, and especially with its mission to serve the rural communities in India?
Thank you, Rituja, and thank you everyone for being here this morning. Deeply grateful for all your support for Amrita-Seattle. As Rituja introduced me, I am Sharmila Pal, serving as the current CEO of Amrita-Seattle since last spring. Before that, I was the program officer of Amrita for about 6 to 7 years and living in India most of the times at our program sites in Ladakh and Bengal. Before I got involved with Amrita-Seattle, my background actually had absolutely nothing to do with community development. My career was in chemistry and oceanography. And up through my academic career from high school, undergrad, graduate school, I was always a box checker type of person and just did things because I knew I had to, right? It was a checklist. I was always into scientific research, and that's what I was doing with world-renowned marine scientists, traveling on international oceanographic expeditions into the open ocean for months at a time, collecting ocean samples, working in lab, doing research, publishing research articles. I've spent 256 days in the open ocean and Arctic, and have been out to actually every single ocean in this world and worked with renowned climate scientists, publishing in journals. And all that was great. But as I drew close towards the completion of my dissertation, I felt that some piece was missing in my puzzle of life. I wanted to pause. I needed to recalibrate myself, find what my purpose drivers are, and I wanted to apply my skills and strengths to make real impact. Yes, I was working with climate change, but I just felt so far removed from making a concrete impact and seeing results, right? So it was after graduation that I decided I need to take off. So I took off and I went to the Indian Himalayas in Ladakh solo to find life's meaning, and that was it. I just with that purpose, and I crossed high mountain passes, came across villages in the Tibetan plateau and also in other parts of India that are still unknown to the rest of the world, and intimately saw the beauty and power of nature and also the harsh realities of life. And because it was amidst this fierce beauty and power of the Himalayas and deep rural India, and that's where lay the vulnerability of children due to severe lack of resources and basic necessities. I mean, I saw how much people struggled for access to basic resources and access to educations and access to achieve their dreams and aspirations. I mean, what was an adventure for me was a tough life for them, and I just couldn't sit still, right? And it took me a pursuit of 3 years to realize that selfless service is the meaning of life. So in 2014, I joined Amrita-Seattle, which my parents had actually started in 2010 to work with children living in utmost rural isolated parts of Bengal. And I took that same work and spirit now to the Himalayas in Ladakh. And I'm so proud to say that over the last 6-7 years, we have constructed children's libraries, some of them the very first in those communities, built joyful reading centers, learning spaces. We run daily after-school tutorials, nutrition programs. We facilitate every year multiple health camps, wellness campaigns. We serve in places where at times the only access to these regions is by trekking over 5,000-meter mountain passes or crossing multiple rivers by dinghy boats and driving through the Himalayan wilderness for hours. The work is tough. It's physically demanding, and the need in this community is endless. It's not a romantic life of saviorship. I think oftentimes what we see in the media is a very oversimplified narrative of poverty, but in reality, true community development, as you all know, is extremely raw. It's difficult, it's emotionally taxing, and deeply organic and human. We serve children coming from utmost vulnerable and marginalized backgrounds who have faced abuse, alcoholism, dysfunctional families, poverty, forced labor, and they're living in some of the last frontiers of India and in very harsh climatic conditions as well. And even though the two regions, Ladakh and Bengal, that we work with are in the same country, they're worlds apart. What works in one region does not work in the other region. And same goes for what works for one kid does not work for the other. One might need extra additional tutorials in math or English, whereas the other one needs, has severe psychosocial issues due to the abuse that they have faced in their life.
Right.
So it's highly individualized, takes a lot of time, dedication, sticking with the child. It's what any parent would do, and I think that's what we're trying to do at Amrita-Seattle, is to give children a healthy and stable childhood so that they can ultimately grow up to be independent, empowered adults who can come out of generational poverty. So I think
I think that really, I mean, I think your passion definitely shows through, what you're trying to do, part of Amrita-Seattle. And again, I think I'd like to remind the audience that Amrita-Seattle is a nonprofit. And so it's really supported by the donations that people like who are on this call. I know I am a personal donor as well. We have, as a family, been contributors in various forms to Amrita-Seattle. And thank you for bringing this page up. If at any time, you are moved by the work that Amrita-Seattle is doing, you can go to this page and it'll be also put in the chat. And also, you can text Live to Serve to 44321. I think for me, it has been a very hands-on experience at Amrita-Seattle. And actually, my spouse was also able to go to Ladakh and serve in some areas. So Sharmila, can you walk us through maybe the struggles that are very particular to the mountainous regions of India, and also sort of, I know you do a lot of work in the Sundarbans, so which is West Bengal. Again, resource deficient areas have extremely different challenges from a geographical perspective. What are the specific challenges that Amrita-Seattle faces? And maybe some of these can be specific towards the menstrual hygiene and health. So if you can talk about that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we work in very remote parts of India, which makes everything very challenging. The logistics are often quite hairy. the two regions, Ladakh and West Bengal, are worlds apart. One is, high mountains, cold desert, and an arid climate, whereas in West Bengal, you're pretty much sitting in a hot, humid chamber, navigating through mangrove forests, crossing river channels, and facing heavy monsoons and cyclones, and also dealing with man-animal conflict with the Royal Bengal tigers. So it's really, really different, the two regions. And our health camps and wellness campaigns are very large expedition style efforts, and they're planned very carefully, all self-contained. And our menstrual hygiene camps have three main components. We have products, focusing on products, information, and support, because we work in very environmentally fragile regions. We're very careful to bring in reusable period kits and not generate plastic trash. So we've been using so far the kits made by Days for Girls, and they've been incredibly useful for us, because you can couple them with training sessions and awareness camps on reproductive health and personal growth. And we've been using these resources also from Days for Girls that they've generated, and also from Menstrupedia, which has animated reproductive health and personal growth videos in all different languages. And doing them in the local language is just so much more powerful. All our training sessions, we make them fun. We use bold words, and make the attendees have fun with it. They're all led by local women and health workers. We've used training materials, like I said, from DFG to train the young students to become health ambassadors and lead MHH, menstrual health hygiene, MHH awareness camps through our social impact lab. You'll hear from Stanzin Angmo later on, who is a perfect example. She literally has gone out and owned rooms full of young women, most of them much older than her, and delivered presentations using DFG flip charts and the Menstrupedia videos to nomadic women. And same goes for our program coordinators in Bengal and Ladakh. And one thing that I was going to show a slide deck. I don't know if the slide deck has been pulled up.
I think you have some pictures to show us, right?
So if you could pull up the slide deck, that would be great. So you'll see in the slide deck that one thing we try to do is get the conversation of periods and menstrual health, hygiene, reproductive health among men and early teens as well. So Nima, who is now a teen, she has been constantly exposed to these menstrual campaigns and packing kits and seeing awareness campaigns being led by her seniors. She's been to the Padmans of India, Murugunantham's actual workshop in South India, and has spent an entire day making sanitary napkins on her own. We've had movie nights where we have watched the movie Padman with our students, and had popcorns with it, right? So I think those kinds of things are really important to make it a part of normal conversation. And we've also been very conscious about bringing out the conversation of menstrual health and hygiene for men. So all our male program coordinators have also been actively involved. You'll see it in this presentation from the onset, both in the conversation as well as the actual tasks, whether it be making the pads at the workshops or distributing them. So we try to really focus that it's not a taboo, to break that taboo, break that stigma. So I think what I've said mostly covers in that video.
And I think the breaking of the stigma is really, really important. I know I was Celeste, I was watching your TED Talk last night, and I think that's where you sort of zoned in as well. I think there's so many issues, and especially around menstruation, that are very taboo, and I know we'll talk about it a lot more. Sharmila, can you describe, is this the Padman machine that we're watching right now?
Yeah, this is the Padman's machine. That's Nima, that's Atal. This is, we took a trip to Coimbatore in South India and spent a day at his workshop. And this is one of the training sessions. This is in the nomadic camps. That's Stanzin Angmo in the middle. This is back in the Sundarbans where, so you'll see more photos of training sessions. That's Padma Shri, a very famous gynecologist of Ladakh. That's Stanzin Angmo. That's one of our Menstrupedia videos. This is in Bengal. Oh, that's me with an underwear, showing them how to fit the Days for Girls kits. And that was me holding the actual material, the unfluffed fluff that goes into the Padman's machine.
Mm.
This was done near the West Bengal Bangladesh border. So the teepee type huts that you guys see, they're actual nomads. They're not stationary. They still lead a completely nomadic life, cut off from the rest of the world. Some of the mountains in the back belong to China, actually. It's such a powerful environment and just so incredible. It's just an incredible experience to just be with them, life altering, I think. I think we're getting towards the end of it.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you can also, as we are watching these videos, talk about, we see these nomadic nomads, and they're moving from place to place. How has the access also been impacted by COVID-19? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, so COVID has thrown up everything, right, for everyone. And in the MHH scheme for us, it has slowed down the supply chain. So last year, after a massive survey of nomadic women and girls who live in the Tibetan plateau, Stanzin Angmo was an integral part of it, along with the survey in Bengal that we did as well. This year, we were going to reach out to 5,000 plus women who live in these last frontiers of India-Bangladesh borders, in the islands, and then up in the Himalayas as nomads, right? But with COVID restrictions and supply chains being affected and political instability in Ladakh, it's put constraints on getting these products. It's put constraints on us arranging our training sessions and reaching out to these girls. A lot of our girls that we had reached out to last year were not menstruators before, but are now, right? And they need that support. They need an adult who can hold their hand through it. Even though they've had exposure and the knowledge, you still need support. It's a big thing. So hopefully it will be, we've been trying. It's been definitely, the capacity has been limited. Hopefully COVID will it'll disappear soon, hopefully, and we can resume our normal pace of programs. And also, reaching out to 5,000 women is not easy. It requires a lot more assessments and thoughts. It's not just about products, and like we'll talk about that today in our webinar. But what we are requesting you today is that our girls and women are waiting for you. And today is International Day of the Girl Child, and so please support our MHH work by sending a gift of a period kit to keep them healthy and safe, which is needed now more than ever.
I agree. Thank you very much again. And like Sharmila said, the goal is to reach 5,000 girls and women with these products for menstrual hygiene. And again, for that, it's a nonprofit. Amrita-Seattle is a nonprofit, and we would love to raise money today to support at least if not all 5,000 girls, at least 100 girls today. So if you can spare, $10 to support each girl and a kit for one girl, we would love to raise that money during this time today. So again, we're bringing up the link. Please sign up. I think we also have a specific page at a range of $300 if you want to specifically donate for menstrual hygiene products. So it's right there at the $300 level. Again, I cannot, I've lived in the United States now for more than 20 years. But before that, I did live in India. And, Sharmila, what you talked about the education, the shame, just the lack of conversation. I think even I've gone through that. I have actually used cloth pads and now feel really horrible about using non-sustainable products. So would love to get more education on this as we're going ahead. So thank you for bringing that link up. Do you have any last words before we go to the panel, Sharmila, or are we good to go to the panel?
Yeah, I think I would just like to say, do you want to maybe share what the kits look like with our audience? I think we asked for, we made that ask, and I think it would be, Balaji, if you could pull up the very last slide. Um, and then go all the way to the end. Yeah, pause, go a little bit back. Nope. Oh yeah, pause. Okay. Yeah, so this is the actual kit with that's reusable cloth. It's very absorbent and it works, it's really great. And thank you, Celeste. It's been a blessing to get these while, like I said, it takes a lot of thoughts and assessment, but while we do that, it's great to give them reusable and sustainable kits. So, and hygienic ones too. And that's the big problem there, right?
Right.
So, okay. We should move on to the panel.
Yes, thank you very much. And I just, from a logistical perspective, I know Jaydeep is traveling, so I just wanted to ask everybody. Jaydeep, would you like to go first, or how is your connection? We would happily accommodate you. I hope everybody else is okay. I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry, it's like I if I go after 10, 15 minutes will be better. I'm just trying to find the right spot somewhere with the network.
Okay, good. Okay, so we'll just carry on with our regular schedule. So again, today we have a fantastic panel to talk about menstrual health and hygiene. And if you have any questions to the audience as you're listening, feel free to post them in the chat. And the way we'll be doing this is, we'll have all the panelists go one by one. We have some prepared questions, which I'll ask again. And then after all the panelists have gone, we'll open it up for discussion and other questions that we might have. So with that, I'd like to welcome Nancy. Nancy, welcome again and good to see you. Nancy is the Global Health Consultant and was a Senior Program Officer at PATH. So Nancy, given your deep experience at PATH and leading really its menstrual hygiene and other global health work, what do you see as the greatest challenges of girls and women facing, especially in resource deficient areas?
Thank you, Rituja, and hello to all the other panelists. It's such a privilege to be on this discussion. And it's a big question, what are the challenges? Because there are multiple, and I think all of us would recognize that it's not straightforward. I think that's been one of the challenges in this sector, is that people want one answer, and there is not. There are so many. And but I would say that the thing I think that is the hallmark is really the issue of the taboos and stigma around menstrual health, and the fact that people still, in all cultures, including this one of the United States where I live, still people are reluctant to talk about it. As much as it's gotten much more attention in the past, in the past few years, it is really still something that people just, don't have enough confidence to feel like it's a normal thing. So I'd say the first thing is normalizing menstruation. And that really, when we can have conversations about it as the very normal biological function that it is, and incredibly necessary and important and wonderful in allowing life to emerge, I hope that transformation starts to, take more hold. But in terms of other things, in addition to that, I think there's a huge piece about gender and about the inequities that girls and women face, and transgender people. So when we talk about menstruation, it's really everyone who menstruates, which includes girls, women, and transgender people. I think that we have to recognize that this has all sorts of ripple effects throughout society, and that so many are denied the basic right to dignified menstruation. As you mentioned, Sharmila, tomorrow is the International Day of the Girl Child, which is it's really great that we're celebrating or acknowledging this issue of periods don't stop for pandemics at this time, because there's so many challenges girls face. And in addition to the issue of the gender norms and the cultural norms, which others can speak to more eloquently than I, but there are huge cultural norms, again, in all societies that affect a menstruators' ability to manage menstruation with dignity. And I'd say that some of the very concrete issues that are any, I think, menstruator can recognize are the access to information and awareness about menstruation. There are many cultures and places where girls and women girls don't know about menstruation until they have their very first period, which is this, shocking thing that is quite frightening. And then how it's treated once they, begin to have a period, it's usually very hush hush. So all of those cultural and gender norms around being a girl or a woman or a menstruator, and then the barriers that are in place, very real barriers in the sense of lack of access to products, and in addition to the information, and lack of access to the systems and services that would support somebody having a period. So, things that we may not think of, but just something like where do you wash? The sanitation systems in schools, it's a huge challenge. I see lots of heads shaking here. That even though there's not great data to support it, I think that if you asked any girl in a low resource setting how they feel about going into the latrine to change a cloth, perhaps, or dispose of a disposable pad, if they have that, there's often, in research we did at PATH, there's often no disposal bin. So that's a big challenge. If there's no place to dispose of this, then that means you carry it around with you. And, that's not fun. So I think that and then there's just the whole issue of where you would dispose of it. Women and girls go through huge hoops to hide their products. And again, with all those taboos, there should not be energy putting into hiding a product. And then we'll hear much more about this, I think, when Jaydeep and maybe Tanya speak, but the issue of the disposable pads and how they clog up, waterways and are thrown in rivers and streams or into toilets and block them. And at great expense, you have to clear them. So the issue of compostable products is a huge one that needs to be looked at. And we can talk a bit more about that, I think, as this goes on. But I think that those issues are the main ones I would point out. I think that those kind of highlight some of the big barriers.
Yeah, so I think I'm hearing, access to information, knowledge, education, products, and then also the social stigma and taboo. This seems to be almost like universal issues. So as you know, and you are on the board of Amrita-Seattle as well. So Amrita-Seattle has a goal to reach, as Sharmila mentioned, those at least 5,000 girls and women who are in those extreme regions in India with these products. And I know there isn't a perfect product, but what would be your, ideal vision of a good product that you could potentially, bring to these girls and women?
It's a great question, Rituja. We worked on products so much at PATH and really did a lot of research at the beginning to understand exactly that question. What would be an ideal product in resource poor settings? And it was fascinating because you began to realize that in many places, underwear is not a given. So as Sharmila had in that photo, showing the underwear, that and I believe that Days for Girls, may provide underwear as part of the kit, and many people who do have these reusable products do, because that's not a given. So I think understanding something as simple and as basic as having underwear. And then I think we have to look at the environment of use. So we've heard some really interesting research from Africa in countries that have a very wet season and very dry seasons. And in the very dry season, the reusable cloth pads are awesome because they can be reused, they can dry quickly. They're made so attractively now, like the Days for Girls ones and the Afro pads and other ones that are not seen so much as a sanitary pad. So I think that some of the great designs of them have really taken them a long way. But in the wet seasons, those ones are really a challenge. They're a challenge to get dry. So I think that we need to look at the environment of use of these products and also think about the whole classification. There are the disposable products, which would be a sanitary pad and a tampon. Tampons are not much used in low resource settings. They're just not very much available. And I think in some places culturally, they're not accepted, but that is changing. You know, I think there's still the access to the information. Women and girls, anybody who menstruates should have that access and awareness to know what is available. And so that there's a choice. We call this informed choice, that they're aware of what's available. There are also the reusable products, which would be the reusable cloth pads, but also the period panties. So that's a whole nother category of ones that are wearable, and yet they have a base in them that is absorbent and can be changed out. And then there are innovations like compostable ones. I think Jaydeep will talk about this, but I think it's so exciting to see people paying attention to the disposal issue, because all these disposable pads currently, if they're not compostable, they have a plastic layer, which is a challenge to get rid of. And they have super absorbent polymers, and they have an overwrap, all these things which are made of something that's not compostable. So there's a lot of work still to be done. And then in the reusable category, there are menstrual cups, which I think are a really exciting option. They take a little while to learn. They take some hand-holding and some education, as all of these do, actually. We can't just hand anybody a product and think they will know how to use it if they have not used the product before. So, you know, there are many products. I think there's room for more and more innovations. And I think that the one of the main things is that people have an access to information and choice about them.
Great, thank you, Nancy, for sort of laying out the different options that we have. So I have a last question for you, and you kind of talked about the stigma. Do you see a generational difference in how women or girls are approaching menstruation now, or what are the challenges that you see? And you can talk about either just India or even throughout the world per se.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there are changes, and again, as I said at the beginning, there's much more information than there was 12 years ago when we began working on this at PATH. There's a lot more access to information. And as Sharmila mentioned with the Menstrupedia, there's really exciting information and exciting ability to have translations into different languages. There are games now that you can access, if you have access to internet. There are some apps that women have. There are period tracking apps and all these things that have information and ability to be aware of what's going on in a person's body. So I think that those things are very exciting. I think that the challenges are different for grown women and for somebody newly menstruating. And I think that they both have challenges. For a girl or somebody just starting, it's so important that they have this education and awareness. And a lot of girls may not have access to a phone. So actually having all that stuff available may still be a challenge. So we have to find creative ways of increasing access to the information and to know what's available for them to know about their reproductive physiology, to know about cramps. That's often a thing that will keep girls from school, is cramps, and it's something that's fairly simple, yet it also is debilitating. So having awareness about that information. For women, I think women have learned to manage their periods somehow or another. And it's often, not what they would ideally choose. But I will say that a clean cloth, which is what a lot of women in India have used for years, and many still do, there's no problem with that. I think it's more about being able to keep it in place, to keep it clean, and to dry it properly. So it's not that it's a bad thing at all. It just, with any product, you have to use it correctly.
Great, thank you. And I'm sure we'll come back to you again, Nancy, but I'm going to move on to Celeste. So thank you again, Celeste, for joining us this morning. Celeste is the founder and CEO of Days for Girls International. So Celeste, why don't you start off with a little summary of what Days for Girls International is, and then I'll kind of get into some questions for you.
Of course. Delightful to be with all of you. Days for Girls is a global organization doing what we're talking about, reducing stigma and shame and turning periods into pathways. And we do that by making sure that the things that we're talking about are happening. Access to quality education that is just about celebrating the facts and engaging a conversation, while also ensuring that they have access to solutions that work for them, that they can count on month after month. So Nancy highlighted how their choice is so important, being able to choose what works for them, whether that's a single-use product or something that is culturally, physically, and environmentally appropriate for them. Days for Girls is in our 12th year and just coming up on our anniversary next month. And we have found all over the world that this is, as Nancy and everyone on the call has stated, a global issue. And if we can normalize periods, if we can ensure that menstruation is seen as just one of those things that connects us all and is about health and wellness, and make menstrual equity about wellness, that will change so many things for communities. What we've found is that often menstruation is one of those factors that keep girls and women from engaging fully in their communities, and even seen differently in some places. And so who would have guessed having product they can depend on and education to go with it could be a normalizer that allows them to have all their days back and confidence in that. So we do that. We do that in 144 nations. We have reached over 1.8 million women and girls, and we're aiming for 2 million by the end of this year. Now, what's significant about that is in 2018, we hit our 1 millionth girl. We're coming up on 2 years later. And that's because of partners like you who recognize that this is something you want to take on in your community and have the courage to make it. I was listening and just had to smile because give local leadership, local power to do the engagement, make it a conversation, include both women and men. Doing that is what brings that normalization. And honestly, it doesn't come by shaming someone. It doesn't come by outlying, for instance, chapati. It doesn't come by mandating. It comes by having a conversation about what works for the community and what the facts are, and giving people the freedom to not feel shame, but instead feel confidence about this. That's what Days for Girls is doing with volunteers and with enterprises that are locally led and make them locally at a cost-effective rate. That's what Days for Girls does all over the world.
Great, thank you. And I think I read specifically about Days for Girls that it's from periods to empowerment. I think that empowerment piece is so important. So as I'm so excited for your 1.8 to go up to 2 million girls and women. And I'm sure Amrita can help you with at least getting to 5,000 of them locally. So, so hopefully we can do that. And again, for those who are just joining us, Amrita-Seattle is a nonprofit, and our goal would be to reach these 5,000 women and raise money to buy these kits or, create these kits in India and support and empower women in India to really take control. And like you said, have choices and feel empowered. So we would love if you want to go to this website that has just come up. We'll paste the link on the chat if you want to. And can I ask, Celeste, is Days for Girls International also a nonprofit?
We are.
So there's another wonderful nonprofit. Please check them out as well. I think it's so important to have these collaborations and support and really, spread this good work across all continents. So Celeste, can you maybe share some examples of, the different countries that you worked in? And you worked in 144 countries. That's a lot. I hope you got to go to all those countries and visit the people. But can you maybe talk about a few examples where you've been really able to address these taboos and, get the conversation going? Because, this is not just recent, it's been going on for generations. So what has been your approach and some of the lessons learned that even Amrita-Seattle can take with them?
Really, that it's that shift in not being ashamed. So in Guyana, South America, honestly, the community didn't know what we were coming for. The leader was bringing us there. And right then, there was a woman who was being ostracized, and they were deciding what to do with her because a banana blight had hit their community. And they had decided she came to work every day, which meant she didn't take off time for a period, which meant the blight was because of her. They had just decided that. In this community, our next day was going to be about talking about women's health and including the community and what is health and what are periods and how can we manage them in ways that work. And this woman became an ambassador of health in her community and went from almost being a pariah to being seen as a leader who people consulted with and as part of her community getting what she needs. In Chowpatty, in the western part of Nepal, in Calicut, I got the great privilege of driving along the roads and getting to that place and being able to engage first with the leaders there and being able to say, the government has not been able to stop you. The law can't tell you to change this, fines can't change it. But what if you made a new decision? What if you ritually cleansed a washable kit that works for you and your women can count on for help instead of isolating? What if you honored your culture in a new way and this got ritually cleansed? What would that look like? And here's the education we teach. And at the end, 2 Hindi pundits stood up and spoke for 45 minutes about how it's time to embrace something that was good in a new way and to turn away from isolating them. And the results have been over 14,000 women in that region reached through circles where the women talk about it together and decide together to practice it in a new way. I think that it's crucial that we make it about a shift that's owned locally as well as globally, that we decide together, no more shame. In Kenya last year, I think September 9th was the anniversary, we had a girl named Jacqueline. And we don't usually talk about the worst cases because there's so many celebrations of where people got what they needed and they had all their strength, of their days, and they made a big shift and they became ambassadors for their community. In this case, ambassadors hadn't gotten there yet. And Jacqueline in her classroom had realized she had a stain on her uniform as she sat in her classroom's desk. And her teacher came over and asked her to go get some pencils. Jacqueline didn't move because she was worried about the stain. Her teacher pushed her out of her desk and then seeing the stain called her dirty and told Jacqueline to wait outside. She ended up running home and her mother said to take a jerry can of water and lower it with a rope into the river and to get water, clean herself up and get back to class. And instead the community found her hanging from a tree. She'd taken her life. Now, not everybody's going to respond that way, of course. And a lot of people go through great shame for lots of reasons. But this is something we can change. And the best part of it is Anita in her area is from her tribe, is from her area. She is an ambassador of women's health. She started getting WhatsApp. She was able to go and talk about what if we make a new decision? What if we erase the shame? What if we together commit? Since that day, thousands and thousands have just drawn a red line against that shame. Thousands. And the government and the community and the first ladies are all talking about not here anymore. This will never happen again. It happened really fast. And the best part, it doesn't have to be a tragedy. We can all decide right now, like you are, that these 5,000 girls, women, and menstruators that you're going to be reached will be another step forward, a wave that will compel conversations in the community that shift everything about this. This is something we can change. It's hard to talk about. It's hard to hear. But the best part is there are a lot of things that are difficult. But this is just supply, real knowledge, and a conversation all brought together. And it's working.
Great, thank you, Celeste. I think you brought up shame a lot of times, but what I'm also seeing is also part of storytelling and how storytelling can help remove the shame one person and one circle at a time. And how can we kind of, as a community, as an organization, keep expanding our circles and make them bigger and bigger. So I think that's wonderful. do you have any other advice for Amrita-Seattle as we or they embark on really addressing this issue of menstrual health and hygiene?
Oh, it sounds like you're doing so much of it well. And I love that. I don't know if you know, but our products have been through 30 iterations, 30, because we're being responsive to what the communities need. And the 31st one is coming. Really excited about that. So stay tuned. And I would say that really, even when pandemics are happening, as you noted, periods don't pause for that. That we're finding that it's even more important that local leaders are leading this. We can't get to them with suitcases, right? And that they're including masks with them, and that they're including social distancing with them, and they're able, because here's what we know. We know this, that violence against women and in communities goes up during highly stressful times like a pandemic. And we know that there's more pregnancy happening. There's more of young girls. There's more abuse happening right now. One of the things that can help them, one of them, is to have the pressure of not knowing what to do for their menstruation taken off, and the conversation about how they matter. And Days for Girls actually curriculum also has self-defense in it. And that self-defense isn't just about hit this, beat this. It's really about, you can have confidence and know you have the right to say no. You have the right to stand strong for your future. And I think that conversation, along with products they can count on and the dignity and confidence that goes with them, is more important right now than maybe, I don't want to say ever, but certainly more important than any other time I've experienced. Right now, they desperately need us, and it's harder to get to them, but your approach of locally led and solutions they can count on really matters.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Celeste, for those words of advice, and knowing that Amrita-Seattle has a great, strong partner in Days for Girls. I think that is really going to charge us up and make sure that we get to as many women and girls as we can in the rural areas of India. So thank you. I'll move on to Jaydeep. Jaydeep, are we good to chat? Yay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. Jaydeep is a founder of Aakar Innovations Private Limited in India. And to sort of leave off where Celeste, talked about innovations, they're on their 31st version of their kit. Jaydeep, why don't you start off with some of the innovations that you have done in the menstrual health hygiene program or products, and give us your overview of where do you see us going ahead?
Thank you. I'm really sorry for this inconvenience. Actually, I was not supposed to come, but then I had to come for a unit setup. And this is one of the Nisarg, which was a cyclone which was hit in India some time back. So one village of that, and network was badly hit also. So we setting up a unit tomorrow here. So I was here, and so thank you for this opportunity to talk about Aakar. So we started about 2010. To make sanitary pads, where started with the manual version, then went on to the semi-automatic, and now we have automatic version also to make sanitary pads. But then I think more importantly, what we had worked on is the compostable sanitary pad. So we started off around compostable, biodegradable was not even there anywhere across the world, and then was made with like soap. As most of you would know, the in a sanitary pad, which I think Nancy talked about a bit earlier. So the top layer generally it is a plastic layer which is non-woven, made out of polyethylene or perforated sheet of polypropylene.
Jaydeep, you're breaking up a little bit. Do you think turning off your
Is also
video might
polyethylene,
help?
and then they sure.
Yeah. We'll see if
it might be good if you turn off your video, because I think your audio it's affecting the audio. Yeah.
Okay,
Is it better now?
Yep, we can hear you.
We'll
okay,
find out.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So actually, I'm next to a telephone tower right now, and I just found out that. And then anyway, what I was saying that like in a sanitary pad, generally the top layer, the back layer, and the SAP, these are not compostable. As again, many of you are aware that like in a menstrual period, a woman the menstrual liquid and the tissue which comes out of the body is on not more than 90 ml generally. So you do not need a pad which you can wear not more than 4 to 6 hours. Let's say between 15 to 30 ml of absorbency is good enough. So initially, when we made the first compostable pad, we removed the top layer and the back layer and replaced with the compostable versions of it. And then we removed the SAP completely. That was good enough when we were working in the villages. But then we started getting some feedback that this is not compostable. Then eventually we worked on, and then we came up with the first biosap, which is made out of natural polymers and cellulose based, which we have come up about a year and a half back, and that we have introduced in our product. And now with that we are able to make ultra thin pads also. In fact, tomorrow is also the day, International Girls Day. We are starting the sales of the urban compostable pads in Amazon, in also in our website. So whereas like every pads we sell, we are going to donate women and girls in villages free pads, and those free pads are also made in the village production units which are set up across India and across other countries in Africa and Nepal. So that like those units also will become sustainable, and women in those places will get sustainable livelihood out of those units. And women and girls who are needy, they will get free pads in those remote areas. So this we have been doing for quite some years from donations and all, but then we wanted to be sustainable on this and make our own money for that. We would generate our own funds to donate these pads, and then happy to send these pads donate pads to villages where you're working, where there are needy women and girls are present there. So these are some parts, and we also worked on indigenous materials. Like we have made pads out of water hyacinth, bagasse, banana fiber, jute, bamboo, almost all possible combinations over last 10 years. And out of that, like I would say, not even a single material can work singularly as an alternative. So there are many claims, but then like with our research says that not a single material except generally the wood pulp, pine wood pulp, which are generally used to make pads. None of the materials are individually good enough. So we had made unique combinations of those materials and introduced, but then out of that, like as of now, we have been able to commercialize the jute in the eastern part of India. We had and then rest are still under pilot, but then we are doing pilots in Kenya, in Kisumu Lake with water hyacinth. We are running pilots with bagasse in India, in the western part of India. And but the other ones like banana fiber is something which is good, but then it is still coming expensive, so we have introduced it as a commercial product. And then other materials also we are going working on, and then intention is that because we work in remote villages and try to procure the raw materials as much as possible locally. So where when we work in Africa also, we try to do the same thing. So right now we are working in Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Ghana, Cameroon, and Zimbabwe there. So we are out of these places, most of the place our intention in longer term is to fully or maybe 80 to 90% sourcing of materials locally. That's the long term intentions, and that's how we are researching on indigenous materials to be replaced with the imported pine wood pulp, which primarily comes from USA and Canada. And some of the other materials like the layers that I think it will be hard to replace local materials for some time now, but then still that research is also going on at our end. Yes.
Great, thank you. So the other issue that comes up, and I think it has come throughout when Nancy was talking, or even Celeste, is the question of education, and just talking about menstruation. You as a male ally, how do you see getting other sort of male, young women, young men, and older men involved in this conversation, and to be good allies to women and girls? How do you see that happening?
Yeah, it is actually, and it was like, so I have some anecdotes. Like when we started work, it was back in 2010. We started going to the villages, and obviously, like in some places, women were not comfortable talking to us, like as a guy, as to me especially. So I used to have like some girls who were going along with me, but then when I went to furthest village, like which was more remote and then more, let's say, tribal, there I found that women were fine with it, and then they said, yeah, you guys please sit down, I don't have problem discussing about this in front of you. Even
Mm,
the another example I can give you is like when I did a session in Afghanistan, and I had a workshop with all women there, and there was no men, I was only men, and we had a discussion around this, around menstrual hygiene, and talked about that, and they were very open about talking about various aspects of that. So this was one side of it, and the other side is that like involving men and boys into the system. So over last 10 years, we had like initially we didn't had a curriculum for them, but then eventually we developed curriculum for the men and boys also, along with the girls one, which are not that elaborate, but then smaller versions of it, but then like which give the basic information to them, and also kind of give this information that what happens in a woman's body, something similar happens in the man's body also. So they should appreciate this, and then not like kind of look at it like, yeah, so and make fun out of those girls when if they're in a co-ed school or a college where maybe sometime they women or girls had issues there. So I think like once you make them aware, I think they became more empowered or like informed, and then that helps that. In fact, like the another information like or experience we had is in the villages is that like men have men have important that like they feel like kids are very important. So having
mm,
kids are very important for them, but then like not menstrual hygiene. So but then like when you tell them that the very simple information is that like menstruation and childbirth is connected, and even a woman is not, if a woman is not menstruating for some whatever reason, that she cannot give a birth to a child, or even like if a woman is not following a hygienic practices of like during the period, then they may have complications during pregnancy also. So once you make this simple thing clear to them, I think like they get the point, and then they, other than like discouraging or not supporting the woman in their family, they start supporting that. But it's a long
yeah.
like time it takes. It may be between 6 months to 1 year of continuous interventions, but we have been able to successfully do it in many places.
Great. So I want you a quick follow-up on that. Have you also seen resistance from women not wanting men to get involved or in just understanding menstrual hygiene? Has that also come up anytime?
Yeah, like so. If you go, let's say we do sessions in schools, whereas like there are girls and boys both are there. But then like we have seen that girls say we try to do like sessions together, but then there is a resistance from the girls that no, if you are doing such sessions, then we are not comfortable talking about this openly, and they may like fine with having the sessions, but then they would not ask any questions. So until and unless the conversation is like both ways, it doesn't really help. So yeah, that has been one challenge, I think, from the girls and as well as from the women's end. I don't know, I don't really have a very good solutions for now for that as of now, but then like we as of now we try to do things separately, not together.
Right, right. And probably a good idea, at least to start off with. Um, so one of the other, you're working in a lot of places in India, and as you started off, you're on your way to install a unit. So that is very exciting. Very excited for your work, and congratulations. Um, access to water is an issue in India, right? And especially in the two areas that Amrita-Seattle wants to serve and really help the women and girls there. They are kind of, from a geographical perspective, a little extreme. So what are the challenges that you have seen, and what are some of the solutions that you might have, especially in addressing sort of the supply chain to create these products locally?
Yeah, so like I think many. So one thing I want to say here is that like before I get into that topic, is that as an organization working in menstrual hygiene for 10 years, we have seen that especially in last 3 years, when this Batman movie came in, the awareness level has gone up quite a bit. But that has also created so many people working in the sector who doesn't have any clue about this menstrual hygiene. I'm sorry to say this, but this is the challenge. And then the other challenge we had started coming up is that like people make different products. Let's say they're someone is working on a cloth pad, someone is making a menstrual cup, and then we had their disposal pads and all. But then people, the organization has started creating cartels, meaning like the one, let's say, who are making cloth pad and this menstrual cup. They just some of them actually start saying that like these are the best products and the disposable pads are very bad. And people who are making, let's say, disposable pad, they say that like no, those are not the solutions, these are bad, or the cloth is the bad. So what we have been saying from day one is that like, so there is nothing is bad, and there is and we what we call it is that the bucket of choice, informed choice, and freedom of choice. So which bucket of choice means that it's starting from cloth to cloth pad to menstrual, sorry, the disposable pad to a tampon to a menstrual cup. All of these are solutions, and every product have their merits and demerits, and one should know that. And that is and they should get unbiased scientific hygienic information of each and every product. And once they get that, they can make an informed choice. And then on top of that, like when they have that information, they should also have the freedom to choose that. It should not be imposed on anyone that like you have to use this product or this brand. Even in a single period which may last for 3 to 5 days, a woman can use different products. Let's say in the night, it is maybe its most comfortable product, maybe a disposable pad. Maybe while they are the person is traveling, maybe menstrual cup is the best product. Maybe when she's going for swimming, maybe a tampons may be a very good product. So this is what we have been trying to promote. But then like we have seen a resistance here, like on different organizations who are especially working on the product side, not on the awareness side, that now these are whatever they are making, that is the only product which people should have, and everything else is bad, or they should not buy that. So this is something which we have been trying to advocate and see, like there's a collaboration needed. There is nothing is bad, and then like there are in fact a need of all kind of products. And also there are and depending on like I think the availability of the product, which is access, secondly the affordability of the product, and also like the convenience, like as you mentioned. So that's why I'm coming to your point, is the water. Some places where water is not available or it is scarce, so maybe product like cloth pad or even like menstrual cup is not really a good solution for them, because of the choice the inconvenience they have because of the access to the water. So there I think like in those places disposable pad is a solution, or maybe there. But then the issue with the disposable pads, which predominantly has been there, is it has plastics and then a lot of chemicals, which have been a challenge. So we were the, as I said, and back in 2012-13 we came up with the compostable pad, which is actually the solution. But then here I would like to mention that across the world, especially in India and some other countries, there is like word biodegradable and compostable have been, these two words have been like misused very badly. So biodegradable by definition, uh, obviously I think most of you know that it says that anything which degrades naturally, you can call it biodegradable. And which means, and there is no timeline attached to that, which means that material can degrade in 5 days, 5 months, 5 years, 500 years, 5,000 years. In a scientific technical term, you can call them as biodegradable. But then the subsets of biodegradable as compostable, oxodegradable, oxydegradable. I'll just talk about a couple of them. So let's say oxodegradable is something whereas like the material disintegrates with heat, sunlight, or ultraviolet rays into microplastics, and then that remains as it is in the environment for thousands of years. And these are actually kind of like more horrible things than the plastic, because it is microplastics, and then maybe animals can eat and they can die. It can come to our food chain also and create challenges. Whereas, and that is the reason it is kind of completely banned from the Europe and being banned from the Americas. But then countries like India and Africa, it is still not banned, and sometimes government have also promoted this oxodegradable pads in the country. And this big and then people get confused with this word because the consumers do not know the difference between biodegradable and oxodegradable and compostable. So now the coming to the compostable part. So compostable definition says within 90 to 180 days in composting conditions, the material will disintegrate and become part of the soil, or become manure without harming the soil, the ecosystem, and the environment of the human or animal body. Now, and then the conditions, if it's not met also, it will still not be harmful, but it may take longer period than 180 days, maybe let's say a year or so, but not beyond that. And then, so this is something, it has international standard like European, American, now India have adopted ISO 17088. And with our intervention, like thanks to Tanya and a team also, we got introduced to the Bureau of Indian Standard of Government of India. And now with 2-3 years effort, now 2019 December, the new standard for sanitary pads in India has come up after 30 years. And that has incorporated the compostable pads as a standard, taking the reference of our certification, which is ISO 17088. So which means like if anyone wants to sell compostable degradable pads in India, they are supposed to have the certification in place. But then still, because it is not compulsory, it is people are still selling pads which are like by the name of biodegradable, which are either like plastic pads or oxo-degradable pads, and mostly imported from China. And the companies which are selling, they don't even have knowledge about the materials and all. And but that, on the other end, the consumers, because they are not aware, they are getting fooled by these products, and they're in fact paying three, 4 times the cost of a normal disposable pads for these things. So this is the ground reality. So just to answer your the question in one line is that compostable pads is the solution, but then it should have the right certifications, because just by saying it is biodegradable or compostable, it doesn't mean anything until and unless it has been certified by the international organization, like which are authorized to do that.
Right, right. Great. That was really great information, Jaydeep. And thank you so much for taking the time on your way to installing a unit, and good luck with that. So we really appreciate your time. And I'd like to move on to you, Tanya. Now, Jaydeep talked a lot about the sustainability of the product and education, right? Like education seems to be a big part, choice of different products. Can you talk a little bit about the education that you have to do as part of your job, and where do you see the challenges with educating women, girls, and even men and boys on menstrual hygiene?
Sure. Thanks, Rituja. So, I mean, education, I think everybody's alluded to it, is in some way or another packaging of informed choice. And I always just talk about it because within menstrual health, any education or IEC is incomplete unless it brings to its core or talks about informed choice. And informed choice, it's not just about the products that are being offered to the communities. It is about that one, but it is also about how to hygienically use those products. What's the quality of those products? So what Jaydeep alluded to in terms of, are they actually doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of performance? So are the consumers being made aware of whether these are quality products? Then are they being given, is the community being given information about how to negotiate for facilities that they need to be able to manage menstruation hygienically? So we spoke about how toilets, sanitation facilities, clean water are often not available. But even when there's a possibility of installing systems, installing facilities in the household, girls and women need sort of the information to be able to negotiate for these facilities with male counterparts, with decision makers within the household, because it is eventually allocation of family funds to these facilities. So that negotiation is also something that is an integral part of education. Another piece of education from a community perspective, which is important, is the environmental impact. Because one is that to engage other stakeholders, especially in agrarian sort of communities, it is important to really understand how different products are impacting the environment. So if you go to an agrarian community, you're talking about the impact of disposable plastic products. It just makes it more sort of real, more, so male counterparts, male stakeholders can also connect with the issue at a personal level. And it's not just a women's issue anymore. So education, I would say, has to connect with or has to include all of the different aspects that are relevant to all of these different stakeholders. Then also is obviously important the health issue. Informed choice is about what products you should be using, or are available to you, but how long should you be using them? I've come across cases where girls have used disposable sanitary pads or even reusable cloth pads for, a day, 2 days even, because disposable pads are an aspirational products and that's what they want to use. What they don't really understand is how that's really causing reproductive tract infections, but how to even really recognize what symptoms of RTIs are, how to really understand whether white discharge is problematic or not. So all of those issues are really connected and they're spread out. They are not, one piece is part of sexual and reproductive health education. One is part of water and sanitation. One is part of understanding your body. So it's all different pieces which have to come together and trying to really identify what matters to each of these different stakeholders within the community.
Thanks, Tanya. The other question that I have is, how can nonprofits like Amrita-Seattle work with organizations like, Menstrual Health Alliance to create policies or even curricula to help educate women and families? And I know you just said it's not just a women's education issue, it is a more societal issue. So how can nonprofits like Amrita-Seattle partner up with larger organizations?
Sure. And, I feel like that's a very relevant question because one is to be able to do the work in the community, which is absolutely essential, and to demonstrate how effective strategies can be implemented. But there's also a next level, which is also equally critical, is to advocate for change at scale. And that scale, fortunately or unfortunately, can be brought about through interventions through the government support. I say fortunately or unfortunately because, one is that we are dependent on the government, but also we have the system in place to leverage if we have that support to actually influence or to actually see that change at scale through the government system. So it's important for, I think, organizations like Amrita-Seattle to work with the government at various levels, starting from central government to state governments, to regional, so in India, it would be the district and block level administrations, because each plays a very different role in terms of how the MHM ecosystem plays out at the community level. So the central government and the state governments often decide what the guidelines or the policies are around menstrual health, whether it's education, whether it's product distribution, whether it's standards, what Jaydeep spoke about in terms of quality. So all of these different guidelines and policies are drafted at the central level. Then at the state level, it's important to work with the state governments. Here in the case of Amrita, it would be West Bengal and the J&K governments to really understand which departments are engaging with MHM, because MHM is not really sort of taken up by any one stakeholder. It's not just health. It's health, it's education, it's women and child development. It's also tribal development in many cases. So multiple stakeholders are engaged, and whoever really takes the initiative is where funds might come from, or is where initiative might come from. So to really identify who might take that leadership role and help push the agenda at the state level. And district and block level stakeholders are the one who actually use that money and use that will to develop implementation strategies and make things happen. So education department has a huge workforce in terms of teachers in government schools who can influence girls and boys who they interact with at a daily on a daily basis. You have the health department, which has ASHA workers, frontline workers, including ASHA workers who can really take this information to the community. WCD, Women and Child Development, they have Anganwadi workers who are interacting with adolescent girls on issues of malnutrition, IFA supplementation, which can have these, which can have MHH sort of integrated within those narratives. ASHA workers are also talking about to pregnant women, to lactating women. So, these are all opportunities where we can sort of bring in menstrual health narratives and sort of make it make it more pertinent for the district administration in terms of how MHH can be really implemented on the ground. So to answer your question, I think it's important to work with the government at all levels, and it looks different at each level.
Yeah, I think that's really important information, and having involvement at the grassroots, and then also at, like you said, the local level and even the state. I think it has a lot that can influence. And I think thank you for pointing out all those wonderful resources where it seems like the framework is in place. Is now how do we sort of start connecting those dots and making actual use in promoting MHM, menstrual health and hygiene, through those channels. I think that probably is the more tactical part that needs to be carried out as we go ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. I know we're running a little short on time, so I want to switch and invite Stanzin to this conversation. Hello, Stanzin. You've been so patient the whole time. And I thought for a minute that you were just sitting and meditating. So it made me feel really nice and peaceful. So thank you for your patience. So Stanzin, you are the Amrita-Seattle Pathway Fellow and also part of the Social Impact. You're a lab fellow as well. You're a student. How do you see your conversation happening with your fellow students? And what have been the challenges in talking about menstruation with your classmates or with people who are younger than you?
Whenever we're talking about a menstruations, they just talk like this. What is menstruation? Why is menstruation? They feel very shy to talking about a menstruation. In my thinking, menstruation is not a bad word or a bad thing. We feel very proud to be a woman, to be a girl. We are one who be a mother. We feel very proud to be a girl. So in my thinking, it is not a bad word or a bad thing. So I advise that don't be so shy.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So what have been the problems that you have faced yourself or your peers have faced, especially when it comes to periods? And you live in Ladakh, right? So is there anything that just has been a big challenge for you?
The problem was that in winter we didn't wash that clothes. That is days for girls pads. In winter there is too cold in Ladakh, so that's why we cannot wash a pads that days for girls or any another clothes. So that's why we could not wash that clothes. So that's why we face a difficulty to wash the clothes of the days for girls. And by using sanitary pads, there is an increased level of garbage. So in my thinking, by using sanitary pads, so by using of pads, san- um,
Like a compostable pad is that something a choice that you'd like to have?
yeah, in my thinking, if you could not afford or buy a sanitary pads, you can use a clean clothes. But using a clean cloth in Ladakh face a difficulty to wash because of the environment, because of the weather or a climate. So there is too much difficulties and problem facing in Ladakh.
Right. Have you ever had this conversation like with your parents or with your aunts, like with your mom? Do you know how they handled it when they were growing up?
They whenever they use a cloth like a substances during their periods, they throw them or they just dug them into the soil. So that's all they just using like this,
Oh,
or
okay.
they just throw out.
Right. Stanzin, how has you being involved in the education of menstrual health and educating other girls, how has that changed you?
I involve in with the Amrita-Seattle gave me an opportunity to participate in a women health ambassador, and I complete the course 101 days for girls. By completing the days for girls, I learned much more about a menstruation health and hygienic. By learning much more about a menstruation health and hygienic, I teach. I also I also advise and teaching girls and women uh, in a rural area of Ladakh about a menstruation health and hygienic, because menstruation health and hygienic is very important in our life. By menstruation, we become a mother and we get an opportunity to become a mother. So in my thinking, we should stay safe, stay healthy, because we are the one who can become a mother. So that's why.
Do you feel happy when you're doing this, or do people listen to you? Do the older women also listen to you when you're talking to them about and educating them on menstrual health?
I feel very happy because uh, they were just listening to me, and they just asking a question about a menstruation health and hygienic, and I'm always ready to help them in any situation. So I feel very proud to help them, and the girls in a rural area of Ladakh, they feel very happy whenever we just say that, "Hey, I can help you during your periods and during your periods management." So they feel very happy and they feel very freely because they use unhygienic clothes during their menstruation time. So we and I advise them, and I say that you can use days for girls, and I tell you, I advise them, and I teach them how to use days for girl. And days for girl is very comfortable for you, and the days for girl is made by a cloth, and it is very comfortable as you use unhygienic cloth. But it is and I teach them about days for girls and many more things about menstruation related, and they feel very happy whenever they just get some kinds of helping from other peoples. They feel very happy, and they think that they are the people who help them. They are just a god, or they are just a helping person for us. So that's why.
Thank you, Stanzin, for doing what you're doing. And it's so beautiful just to see in this panel, the vision, Celeste, that you have for me to see Stanzin actually apply it in real life, and going across the shame and really empowering people to talk about this. And Stanzin, a wonderful job. You probably don't even realize the difference that you're making in so many people's lives by just giving them a space to talk about menstruation. So thank you for doing all this work. My last question for you is, where do you see yourself going ahead, and what plans do you have? Is there anything that we can do to help you?
Yes, ma'am. There is a big issue in Ladakh and as well as in West Bengal related to the water. In Ladakh, we didn't get a good supply of water in winter. By using a days for girls, we could not wash it. And in West Bengal, there is unhygienic water, so they could not wash the days for girls. So there is a big issues in Ladakh and as well as in West Bengal, the issues of water. So in my thinking, if there is some kinds of suggestion or any answer that issues related to the this question, so please give me a suggestion for this, so that I can help the people of the rural area, and so that's why I want this answer of this question.
Thank you, Stanzin. It's a wonderful challenge, and I'm sure Celeste is ready to take it on. I'm sure it'll be version maybe 32 or 33. And if I may suggest, Celeste and Nancy here in Seattle, we should definitely propose this question to one of our local innovators. We have these competitions for innovation and labs and even technology happen here all the time. I'm sure it will be a wonderful problem for kids and people who really want to solve this issue.
I think if I could just comment, I think that Stanzin, that was really, really great to hear what you had to say, and your leadership in this area is so clear, and it's very exciting and moving. And actually, being on the board of Amrita-Seattle now, I can't wait to get involved in doing some assessments of what is actually needed, because I think that's the first step we have to really look at is, as everybody's been saying, and as you said so clearly, Stanzin, with the weather there, there's not one product. The Days for Girls might be great in the season where it's not so cold, but maybe there needs to be another product or other products to be had in different seasons, in different times, as Jaydeep and others were saying. So I think that's the challenge, that we're talking about here, is how do you reach girls and women in remote areas with products that meet their needs? And it's not simple. It's absolutely not simple. And it's something that has to have a lot of attention paid to, and we're working on it. I think the whole menstrual health community globally is looking at these issues. And it's exciting to hear some of the options, from something like a reusable menstrual cup, which can last for up to 10 years, and how powerful that can be when people overcome any kind of concerns about using it, and have the courage to try them, or compostable products, or the various types of reusable wearable products. So there are a range, and I think it's up to us to put some resources into understanding what the needs are and how we can increase that access to them, the supply chain, to make them affordable and available.
Thank you, Nancy. I think you really presented the challenge, and I think if there were a group of people who would take that challenge on and actually solve it, I know they're right in this panel here today. So I know all of you are excited to solve this problem. And I think another opportunity that I see is, from Jaydeep's work across different countries, Celeste, your work, and Nancy, of course, you have experience in implementing and studying these solutions, is how can we also sort of learn from different cultures and try to, make these solutions work in the areas that Amrita-Seattle really serves. So it is so wonderful to have talked to you, all of you. And I know we're at the top of the hour. We don't have time for questions, but I have tried to weave, the questions that were coming through in our conversations. This is a very important conversation. I'm sure we'll keep this going on. And what I'd like to end with is, again, Amrita-Seattle has a goal of reaching 5,000 girls and women with access to menstrual health hygiene products. Amrita-Seattle is a nonprofit, and so we would love if you could go to the link that's pasted in the chat, or which we'll bring up here shortly, and make a donation. One kit for a Days for Girls International cost around $10. So if you want to sponsor that for one of the girls who, like Stanzin, lives in Ladakh, and if we can support the local economy, and if we can support women with good hygienic products, let's do that. So I really encourage you to really stretch yourselves and give. Amrita-Seattle also has local volunteering opportunities here in Seattle. So please go to the website and where you'll find more information. And thank you again, you wonderful panelists. It's been so inspirational. I am inspired, to do my best to help the organization and you personally to do whatever we can in really talking about this issue. And so with that, I'd like to close out with the last video, which kind of showcases what Amrita-Seattle does. And with that, have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Great job, Tanya.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Balaji, are you going to play that video? We have a last video.
Sure.
A great river always begins somewhere. Often it starts as a tiny spring in the mountains and then joins hands with other tributaries to grow as it finally plunges into the sea. So, when people ask me why Amrita, the essential answer is that we reacted to a set of problems by focusing on what could be done. As it turned out, the idea sprang from my roots, merged with many other sources of knowledge and action to form a confluence that grew bigger than I would ever have imagined. Amrita-Seattle breaks the cycle of poverty by creating pathways for vulnerable children living in some of the most isolated rural regions of India and Nepal. Our modules of education, healthcare, and advocacy guides children from elementary to employment. We work in the island villages that are tucked deep within the Sundarbans mangrove forests in West Bengal and in remote isolated Himalayan villages in Ladakh and Nepal. We refuse to leave no children behind. In rural isolated India, due to poor infrastructure and abysmal resources, families very often have to give away one or more child to a well-off family in the cities. The child lives with a foster family and serves as a labor and is completely dependent on them. School takes a low priority and they remain as a source of cheap labor for the rest of their life, unable to become self-reliant and break the cycle of poverty.
I am Tufan Barik, a medical internee. After a few days, I will be a full-fledged physician. From my childhood, it was a dream to become a doctor, but it was challenging for me for various reasons. Amrita-Seattle helped me during my critical situation. So now I am ready to give back. Now I am proudly leading the Amrita-Seattle's rural health camp. Thank you all the members of Amrita-Seattle family.
Hello, I'm Rajyasree. I grew up in a highly dysfunctional family in West Bengal, later with my single working mother who had no sleep in her eyes. To support of Amrita-Seattle, I completed my school, colleges and university. Now, I am a teacher in many colleges in West Bengal. In my free time, I do work for Amrita-Seattle. Thank you, Amrita-Seattle and all members of Amrita-Seattle for changing my life.
Our impact model drives deep into the communities we work with. We focus on the number of lives changed and relationships built versus the number of children reached. I cannot change a population of 1.3 billion, but together we can create a model solution that can be a blueprint for rural community transformation. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, everyone, again. And have a wonderful weekend.